Glance Technologies owns and operates Glance Pay, a disruptive mobile payment technology now live in 16 cities in Canada and about to launch in the US. With revenues up 664% in the last quarter, Glance Technologies has the potential to be a worldwide leader in an industry projected to grow to $1.3 trillion in 3 years. Glance Technologies stock symbols are GLNFF in the US and GET in Canada. Find out more at glancepay.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Stewart Muir. He's the Executive Director of the Resource Works Society. Welcome back to the show, Stewart.
Thank you, Jim.
National headlines, the trade war between BC and Alberta due to BC's obstruction of the Trans Mountain Pipeline to the coastline, and Alberta now refusing to buy BC wines. Where's this going to end up? Who's right and who's not?
Well, it could wind up in the courts with constitutional challenges abounding. We've got also in BC not just the provincial government, but also the city of Burnaby that is launching court challenges. There's a lot of friction, a lot of this work being done. And when it led to Premier Notley of Alberta to fire a volley, I think a lot of people were waiting to see what BC would do in response. And it does seem as if BC is still trying to figure that out, because there hasn't been a visible response that we've seen, except for the Premier Horgan, to say, well, it wasn't really what we intended to do. We didn't set out to do it. You're misinterpreting our actions. We're really just trying to protect our coastline. That's what it's about. But that was in no way satisfactory to Premier Notley. She is charging ahead with a full-bore attack on BC for what she says is outside of its jurisdiction.
Well, Alberta also stopped negotiations on purchasing power made by the Site C Dam.
Well, that's right. And, I think that's a very technical issue. It's hard to know for sure exactly what that pronouncement means. I have a little bit of skepticism right now just based on what I've heard about it, but it's certainly, on the face of it, I mean, you think, okay, Alberta has announced its plans to get off of coal in its energy mix, which is, I think, about 30 to 40% of their electricity that is made by coal, and most of the rest of it is from natural gas, and then there's a growing and important wind component. And over time, what they want to do is replace the coal with natural gas and alternatives like more wind and other things that come along. But they also know that in BC, with the Site C, that's a hydro dam. It doesn't produce in its operation any greenhouse gases, so it's the perfect kind of energy. Right now, it's something they could put into the oil sands to de-intensify the carbon footprint of Canadian oils that are produced, so that it becomes, more in line with the environmental aspirations we all share. And that would be a very good solution. But if Alberta is saying it's off the table now, that is a potential loss to BC for sure.
Now, on the constitutionality, Alberta's premier is arguing that BC, under the Constitution, can't block Alberta's trade products. On the other hand, with her refusal to buy BC wines, there's that court case about the man who imported Quebec beer into New Brunswick, which found that it was in violation of the North American Act that created Canada to restrict interprovincial trade.
Yes, well, I've recently met a micro-brewer, a friend of mine who makes beer in Vancouver. He says that it's easier for him to export his product made in Vancouver into countries like Estonia in Europe than it is to get it into another Canadian province. For sure, we have a messed up interprovincial trade system already, and it's only getting worse, it looks like.
Well, I saw an estimate it costs $10 billion a year or something like that because of the trade barriers between provinces. And they did have a conference to try to eliminate those barriers, but the premiers all agreed not to look at liquor. And that is, the one case that's already gone to the courts, and that's why there's been no government appeal on it. They don't want it re-examined. Yeah,
it's one of those things where you've got different interest groups. They have their say, and that's how it seems to play out when it comes to wine. It's a real shame because the people hurting first and foremost are those wineries right here in BC that are depending on their sales in Alberta. And, there is some speculation that wine was chosen. Out of all the things that you could choose from BC that go to Alberta, for example, there's $16 billion worth of goods and services that are traded. A huge amount of lumber that goes across the border from BC. Why didn't they hit that? Well, right now we have a by-election in Kelowna West. There's a lot of wine produced in that part of the country, the Mission Hill Winery, Quailsgate Winery. There's a former MLA for the BC Liberals who's running to reclaim his seat. And the thinking is that maybe the political calculators in Edmonton said, well, let's go after wine because that's going to hurt the NDP at a time when they'd rather get maybe some good news out of a by-election in the Okanagan, where traditionally they don't tend to have much of a foothold in the present cycle. So it seems as if this aspiration, if the NDP did have any, is up for grabs, and we'll know soon whether Premier Notley is going to be triumphant in this essentially political fight. And the strategists on both sides of the border are exercising themselves. We have that website that has been launched by Alberta to get people to sign a petition, send letters, and speak out about it. The Keep Canada Working website. They're really jumping in there. I think the people in Victoria have been totally surprised. They did not see this coming, and they're not prepared to deal with it yet.
Some people are saying, why isn't Prime Minister Trudeau exercising some leadership ability here to either negotiate a settlement here or just to bluntly do what Prime Minister Harper used to do, pass another law saying this must go through and anything to throw a barrier in the way is illegal?
Yeah, well, I think the federal Liberals are going to say we're not going to do that because it's only going to make the problem worse. It'll make us look like we're the ones selling the pipeline. It's not our job to sell a pipeline any more than it is our job to sell a car or any other business service or good. It's up to the companies to do that. It's up to Ottawa to regulate impartially, to make those difficult decisions. Another part of the context here is that just last week there was an enormous raft, like hundreds of pages of new regulations applying to our environmental approval processes for things like pipelines and mines and all sorts of other things. And also the National Energy Board got blown up last week. And so it is an amazing coincidence, or is it really a coincidence? But it's certainly a confluence of significant factors around energy that are really poising Canada on potentially the precipice of some major trouble ahead if we don't get the ability to compete on the world market. Last week we saw Suncor, which is a Canadian company. It's probably in your pension fund. Anyone who has a Canadian pension has got some Suncor in it, pretty much guaranteed. You might know them better as Petro-Canada because they own all those gas stations. So it's a Canadian flag-waving brand. Well, their CEO surprised a lot of people when he said, we're not going to be investing in Canada right now. He didn't say never because of the uncertainty here. Meanwhile, down in the USA, the Exxon company, which is their biggest oil company, said, oh, we love it down here. They've lowered the taxes. They've got these business-friendly conditions. We can't wait to invest more money in American oil and gas development, and we're going to be doing it. Meanwhile, Suncor is not going to be investing in Canada, but they're going to be maybe investing in the States. So this is entirely because of things that politicians have done. We're driving investment out of Canada to the States. They're going to get the benefits. The climate will not benefit one iota, but the American plutocrats and workers definitely will. It's too bad for Canada.
What about BC's carbon tax and the federal government's carbon tax? Is that driving business out of Canada?
Well, the BC carbon tax has been around for a decade, and it never really became controversial in BC. People accepted it, I think, largely because it was billed as a revenue neutral tax that was used to feed, back to consumers. So you'd be, disincentivized from doing certain things, but encouraged to do other things that are more beneficial. Now, it's been argued that it's not really that neutral, but even if it is, it definitely wasn't a big political problem. However, carbon taxes all of a sudden in Canada are very different. We've had Ottawa driving the national carbon strategy. What's happened? I was in Ottawa on the weekend. I attended the Manning Conference. I wanted to hear what people who congregate into that part of the spectrum have to say. I watched as the three candidates for the progressive conservative leadership in the province of Ontario, they want to be the next premier, they want to kick out Kathleen Wynne, they all said the same thing. We will get rid of carbon pricing. We will reject the carbon tax in Ontario if we become the next government. Now, that's a very interesting tack. A lot of people in the Conservative Party are not on board with that, but it shows that they are addressing what they think is a disconnect between the politicians in Ottawa and what the ordinary person experiences, and the reason is affordability. Because people have been crying the blues in Ontario, quite rightly, that their electricity bills are just skyrocketing. There's been a little work done to address that, so they've come back down, but there's a lot of voter resentment there over politicians meddling with people's bills.
Plus, Canada is the coldest country in the world. We have lots of natural gas to heat and power things, and that would discourage that.
Well, that's right. We do have abundant, affordable energy that, even though it is a fossil fuel, it is much lower in its carbon footprint. We use it efficiently. You know, if you've got a recent home or you've replaced your furnace, you'll know that the literature, what is it now, 97, 99% efficient? It's so efficient. It's not wasteful at all. So you can know that if you do the right thing, you're doing the right thing by the environment as well, not just saving money. And you know, it's perplexing to people that they should have to pay so much for electricity, but that's the situation they've got there. They've also got a problem with what's called carbon leakage, a technical term, which just simply means that, hey, if it gets too expensive to do business in Canada, people are just going to hop over the border and do business down there if they think it's cheaper. That's what Suncor did last week. That's carbon leakage, and it's carbon leakage when I think the Procter & Gamble factory in one of the towns in eastern Ontario said, we're shutting down, we're getting rid of 300 people here, and we're going to go open up the same factory down south of the border. That's carbon leakage too, according to some people.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after the break.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. A work program is planned for our Finland property that contains diamond-bearing kimberlite. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ADD, and the Frankfurt Exchange, symbol 82A1. Please visit our website at arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, a lot of people don't know, I didn't know, that the world's largest gold project is underway right here in British Columbia.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens out of sight and out of mind. You know, we've got the Seabridge Gold Company, which is a fine Canadian company that's been developing the KSM Gold, Copper, Silver project up in the Northwest. It's an amazing thing. It is exactly as you say, Jim. It's the world's largest gold project.
Well, we've known forever that there is gold in BC. We've had gold rushes in the past. Is this the new version of the gold rush?
Well, it is. Only nowadays it happens in a much more, controlled, predictable way as the companies do their geological surveys, and they find, in this case, it is a story that gets better and better as they do more drilling and more exploration using their high-tech equipment. They figure that these deposits up there in this area have become more and more valuable as they drill more. There's more resource there. They've increased their gold resources to 20 million ounces, a 300% increase in how much they believe is there. It's the same story with copper as well. They've got almost 9 billion pounds of copper. That's a lot of electric cars you could build with that copper from BC.
Well, I was going to say multiply 9 billion pounds by about $3 and change.
Yep, and even my math would tell you that's $27 billion, isn't it? That's a lot of value that they'll be able to extract, and they're going to be doing it, by the way, in a world-leading, environmentally sound manner, which is the starting point for anything you can do in mining in Canada these days. Certainly, there's some instances in the past that we had to learn from the hard way, but anything being built right now in the way of a new mine is leading edge in terms of environment and innovation.
Is Vancouver still the junior mining company capital of the world?
I don't think anyone has taken that crown away from Vancouver. I attended the annual Roundup conference, which is a gathering of exploration people. They also have the Cambridge conference, which is the money people. So you got both the geos and the financiers gathered during the space of 1 week in Vancouver. Pretty exciting buzz to it. You can almost see it. You walk down the sidewalks around that latter part of January. You can tell those guys who've just come out of the bush, those men and women who have that glint about in their eye that they're looking for a gold nugget somewhere, but they're headed for the conference center.
And of course, in an urban environment, you don't think much about mining, but in Vancouver, they do.
Oh, they do. You know, it's where everyone comes. If you're, say, in Yellowknife or in Whitehorse or anywhere where mining is done in the field, and you want to see the people that you do business with, the thing you do is you go to Vancouver and you meet with them. And that's especially true in January when we have Roundup, because it's when you get to see all those people all in one place, and you have premiers come to town. You know, I saw the Premier of Northwest Territories, had a good chat with him. He's really frustrated about some of the obstacles to them having the kind of economic dependence and quality of life they want. You know, they got a very young population. It's a very large portion of Indigenous people up there looking to have prosperity. They're seeing all of these obstacles being placed in the path of mining. You know, it's going to prevent those people from moving forward if they don't see some progress. He actually wrote an article, I think, in the Vancouver Sun while he was here. So you hear about all these things firsthand. That's one of the cool things about Vancouver. Despite the fact it's this jewel by the sea and people relate more to, you know, going to yoga class or whatever we do in Vancouver than they do to mining. But the fact is it's mining that's one of the biggest drivers of the whole economy.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
I'm Brian Fowler, president of Blind Creek Resources Limited, listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, ticker symbol BCK. Blind Creek is focused in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. The company's key property is the Blend Project, one of the largest undeveloped lead-zinc-silver deposits in Western Canada, plus plans to advance the recently acquired, fully permitted historic engineer gold mine in the Atlan district of northwestern BC. Check us out at blindcreekresources.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Stewart Muir. Stewart, Japan has a project underway that should make the BC timber industry pretty excited. What is it?
Well, it's a very tall building, but you know the reason that the timber industry, the lumber industry in BC is following this stuff is that right now we've got the largest primarily wooden building in the world right here out at UBC, Brock Commons Tallwood House, 174 feet high for students to live in, and we're pretty proud of that. But I'll tell you what, this news out of Japan is going to be a little upsetting to people who thought we would be holding on to that record.
They call it the ply scraper, don't they?
Ply scraper, that's right. So we're talking Japan building a wooden building 1,148 feet high right in central Tokyo, and it's going to just leave those other ones in the sawdust, so to speak.
How are they building it, and why are they building it?
Well, the reason they're building it is they want to create what they call an environment-friendly city of high-rise buildings made of wood. So it's kind of like a forest of wooden buildings in downtown Tokyo. And, you know, the Japanese, they have the aesthetic of appreciating nature, and I can see how this fits into that. And they figure that they are going to need to have, in order to make this thing work, engineering-wise, they're going to need to have a combination of wood and steel. So it'll be 90% wood for the construction material, and the other 10% will be steel. So they've cooked up a plan. They've got architectural designers who've got a braced tube structure that will be able to withstand the kind of winds and the possibility of an earthquake that they would be planning for in a place like Japan. And that's how they're going to make this engineering marvel work.
Also, we know wood does survive earthquakes well. The so-called Canadian Village in Kobe, Japan, very few casualties or collapsed buildings, and they use Canadian traditional building methods, boards and nails. Nails apparently in an earthquake pull in and out, but don't completely collapse or withdraw from the structure. So very few casualties there. But when you start talking about a structure that's that high, that's about what, 110 stories?
Yeah, that's getting up there. And you know, a little bit of give and take. You know, we've been talking about Alberta and BC. Maybe they should have more of a wood structure in their political relationship, a little more give and take, because this thing is going to be able to withstand that type of stress, and it will also be a great advertisement for the wood that they're sourcing for this. Now, I'm not sure where they're going to get the wood from. I bet they're going to get it from BC, good chance, and they will be able to send that message to the world if they build that thing, and BC's part of the story. That's fantastic news for our industry.
Stewart, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you, Jim.
My guest has been Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the ResourceWorks Society. His website, resourceworks.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at HowStreet. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show or our guests can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.